Hello, Tonichi. It's so great to have you. Welcome to Bloom. Thank you for agreeing to join us for an interview. Um, so I will say it's been a pleasure to have known you. I can't believe it's been over 10 years now. We had the opportunity to meet, what was it, 10 years ago when we were working on a project together in the Philippines. And fast forward now, we're in different places, but back together again. So I'm going to kick off this interview and first ask you to introduce yourself. And then just jump into your career journey. We'd love to hear how you got to where you are today, which is a senior leader. So go ahead.
Sure. Hello everyone. Hi Donna. Hi Don. I'm super honored that you invited me here today. My name is TonichiAchurra-Parekh. I'm a vice president for Concentrics. That's my day job. My other hat is I'm a member of the board for the Contact Center Association of the Philippines. And I'll jump into that on why I'm doing that, all of those things when I talk to you a little bit about my journey. So I think one of the things that I really wanted to share with you guys is how I started my world in the customer experience industry, right? So I started my journey, or I started my life, my professional life, as a contact center agent for Citibank. So I was in Citibank taking collection calls for credit cards for those folks who went past due. But quickly, that was my first job. And within my 5 years of tenure in Citi, I realized that I had such passion for service. And I didn't realize that until I was working in Citi. So I'm one of the lucky ones who immediately understood or immediately came across or enlightened with what truly inspires me. And that entire experience of, being able to help people, I realized that that's my calling. So I guess my 5 years in Citi was really around, my ambition. I really wanted to do very well. But more than that, I was just happy. I enjoyed what I was doing. So there was a sunrise industry. They called it the sunrise industry 5 years into my professional life. It's called the BPO industry. It's the business process outsourcing. It's the second most important industry in the Philippines, next to the overseas Filipino workers. So we are the second highest dollar generating industry in the Philippines. And it grew to that. It was pretty lucky. I was pretty lucky because when I joined the industry, it was very young. That was back in 2003. And I had to pluck myself out of my comfort zone and, join the night shift. So at the time, very few people would have the courage to actually do the night shift. But I thought it was very interesting kind of work. So I joined, I became a team leader, and I simply loved the job. And I guess the rest is history, as they say, right? But through the years, I realized that, I came across a lot of people, a lot of leaders, a lot of clients, who really molded me into becoming the leader that I am today. So for example, I always gravitated towards the banking and financial services institutions just because that's where I started. But I really graduated from business management. And through that experience, being able to actually um engage in different kinds of industries through this work, I met so many people that taught me so much along the way. So I'll just quickly go back to when I met Donna. When I met Donna, I just joined a company called Genpact. Genpact is highly Indian-based. It was an Indian-based company, small at the time in the Philippines. And, it was very male-dominated. very male dominated. So I found myself being most of the time the only woman sitting in a boardroom. At that time, though, I was also lucky that I think during that period, the male leaders were also very conscious and cognizant of my presence, and very conscious, very cognizant, very careful and sensitive. So that experience actually was very helpful to me, because I realized that, there were male leaders who were ultra sensitive to me being the only female in the boardroom. And I appreciated that. In so many ways, I appreciated that. There was only one time where I had to go all the way to the US, make a presentation. And later on, I went inside the conference room to present to a client, and I was the only female. So I had nothing to say the entire time. And I asked, what am I supposed to say here? No, that's okay. You just stay there, because we have to show that there is a female in the room. That was a turning point for me, because I felt like, okay, I have so many things to say and have so much to bring to the table, but because in this specific conversation, there's really nothing for me to say. And so I thought, okay, this is not right. So when I went back and I told my boss at the time that I felt really bad that they flew me all the way to just be a representative of the female workers there. That didn't make sense to me. And I think that was also an eye-opener to the folks. So kudos to the leaders, while they're very conscious, and it happens to me as well. We're very conscious about, diversity. We're very conscious about making sure that, we present ourselves that way. Sometimes we forget that we go back to what we have been so accustomed to, right? We go back to, it was what's natural to us, and we forget what we're actually preaching. And so that entire journey actually helped me toughen up. So if you guys know, I've always lived in the Philippines except for 1 year. I lived in the States for 1 year in California, but all my life educated in the Philippines. And in the Philippines, we're really not confrontational. We are very shy, very friendly, sweet. Donna knows that I'm not that sweet, but it takes so much for us to speak up. And so my experience being always in a room full of male forced me to either, watch them fight over the Philippines when I am the Philippine leader. I had to push myself to stand up and say, you're talking about my country, let me speak about my country and my business. So I was with Genpact for 5 years. That entire journey really was a growth experience for me, because that was totally out of my comfort zone. Lucky for me, I had really good leaders who really pushed for that. And again, I go back to, I think even to this day, I go back to, we all want to do the right thing, but then sometimes we fall short because we go back to what we all grew up in. And I also have to correct myself sometimes there. Fast forward to today, I have been such an advocate. The reason why I got so excited with your invitation is because I am such an advocate of simply having conversations. Sometimes I get engaged into discussions without really knowing what we're going to talk about. Why? Because there's so many things for us to talk about. And the pandemic taught me that, you get into a webinar, you get into a conversation only to find out that everything that you're saying, there's somebody from the other side of the world who actually relates to what you're saying, no matter how little or how big. And sometimes you'll be surprised that, someone will say, I thought it was just me, but it's not, So that is an entirely different experience for me. So I guess really what at this point I really want to impart, to you guys. I mean, Donna knows me from before. I have evolved. I was, I really used to work like 24 hours a day. Got to a point where, I'm at a stage in my life where I had to really prioritize on what's truly important to me. My family, what I'm passionate about, which is my job. And I'm also passionate about my advocacies, which is to empower not just women, actually, but to provide opportunities for women to be in front of a lot of things.
It's such a great story, Tonichi. One thing I want to probe on a little bit is, because you had these experiences of being like the only woman in a boardroom, or the only woman in, maybe the only Filipino in a setting, when you're now in this senior leadership position and you're maybe in a room where you're one of two women, or you have somebody on your team that's going to be the only woman, how do you prepare the way for them? Or, are there things that you have done to kind of help them learn to speak up, or, speak in advance for them? How have you done that, brought your experience into now your leadership?
Interestingly enough, my biggest mentor is my biggest critic, is my husband. He is an epitome of a man who truly empowers a woman, because he teaches me, he listens to me, he criticizes everything that I do. And then he's also the one who lifts me up. So I think, whenever I speak with women, and my husband taught me, key is to be prepared all the time. And I think that's the one thing, and I realize that's one thing that sometimes we fall short on, because there's just so many things that we're trying to do, right? We have a home, children, a husband, work, everything else that we need to do. That, sometimes we put such little time in preparation. So that I learned that, no matter how impromptu a situation would be, you always have to come prepared. Prepared so that you're not insecure about your voice. You're not insecure about what you're going to say, because you know what you're going to say. You're okay to ask questions, because that's the one thing in this culture, Dawn, that, I guess maybe it's not just women, but mostly women, that we really struggle to just say, I don't think that's right, or it's probably because in many years ago, we learn in Filipino, translated in English, so it's kind of hard for us to find the right words. That was something that we discovered as we were going through this industry. That was the challenge. Now, this workforce, this generation, they can articulate themselves much better because they grew up in an educational system that is really speaking in English. That could be, even in the most difficult areas, they speak good English now.
So, Tonichi, it's so interesting to hear your story and hear your reflections. And growing up as a Filipina myself, I grew up with the culture. So through business, for me, I always got the feedback, you need to speak up, and you need to be part of the conversation. You need to be a leader. But at first I thought, it's personality. I don't know, but it really is culture. And it took a while. It took a lot of coaching to be able to speak up. And I think you said being prepared is absolutely critical. So I would be prepared. I would know some questions, some things that I wanted to say when I went to meetings, but it was still very difficult. What's some advice that you would give to others around you're prepared, you know what you're going to say, but in these settings, in these business settings where you have senior leaders, which are very intimidating, you have maybe many men, how do you get your voice? What was it that helped you get your voice? Because I know now you are not somebody that sits back and is quiet. So what are some tips that you would share and how did you get your voice?
First of all, I remind myself, what's the worst that can happen? What's the worst that can happen? What I said is wrong. The worst that can happen, I can get fired. I can find another job. I always had the mentality that what's the worst that can happen to me? So, and how do I move on from that? I always knew that I could move on from whatever worst that happens to me. Second is, as a leader, I guess I have seen multiple styles of leadership in terms of, how leaders support me. There are leaders who just let me fly and let me fall. There are leaders who would really handhold me in certain cases. And then there are leaders who will just, hover around. And so I have customized my leadership style, especially where I know that where I've got team members who have difficulty in speaking up. When I'm with them, we keep an eye contact, or if it's online chat, I would always ask. And before going into a room, they would know if I'm their leader, they would know. If I look at them, does that mean, do you want me to speak first? Or do you want me to set the stage up for you? So I kind of prep my team so that they know that I'm here. If you blank out, I'll figure out a way. If I start with something and I say, would you like to add to that? That I have set them up for something so that they can take off. Because usually it's the first word that's hard for them to bring out. So I would typically set them up, and they know that. I would set them up and say, would you like to add to that? Because you're the expert here. And then, so I think it's important to really understand whenever you're sponsoring someone or mentoring someone, what their capabilities are and what their opportunities are, so that you can take them off from that point.
I think that's a great model. And I also think that's a great message to individuals that are trying to get better at speaking up, to work with their manager or a colleague and ask for support, and let them know, help me, I'm working on this, and how a manager can support them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a funny story, because I was talking to one of my team members in the many years ago, and I was teaching her how to provide, difficult feedback. So I was talking to the person we were going to give feedback to, and I said, I went back to her and I said, okay, remember, softly, slowly. In Filipino, I don't know how to, it doesn't sound right, but I said kiss and then hug. In Filipino, it doesn't mean that way. It just means, okay, show some compassion, because we were going to, at the end of the conversation, this person was a woman and the person was another woman. I saw her kiss and hug the person. So when I walked out, I said, well, I didn't mean that literally. Yeah, but I think, in so many cases, and this person has been my mentee until now, forever. And we always laugh about that. But I think in so many ways, those kinds of connections, especially with women, because sometimes there's a certain way we do things that really deepens a connection.
For sure. And when you were telling the story about, setting the stage for your team, like saying, "Hey, you're the expert," it reminded me of, a time that I was in a room with, a lot of senior leaders, and I was not sitting at the table, and another woman was like, "Come up here," like I was kind of lurking in the background, and that experience just really has helped me to, like, every time I'm in a room, and we're less and less we're in literal rooms anymore, right? We're so much in virtual rooms.
Yeah.
But when I'm in a physical room, if I notice anyone, this isn't just about women, right? Every person that is in a meeting has an important role. And so I'm always saying, we can move the chairs, come up here, right? We don't want to be exclusive of, like, oh, the important people are sitting at the table. And and then from a virtual perspective, just trying to um, encourage people, like, hey, turn your camera on, we want to see you. So I think I just really loved hearing that of, if somebody else is afraid to talk, but that they have something really good to say, to really position them as an expert. I think that's just a fantastic tip for anybody. Like, you don't even have to be a leader. You can do it for a colleague. You can do it for anyone. So thank you for sharing that.
Totally. Yeah, there was one time I was walking into a room full of clients. It was my first time to meet this client. I was new in the company, and the first thing the client asked me was, "So what do you do for me? What do you do for my company?" Because he was not very happy with the overall thing. So I sat down and I said, "Nothing." Because I wouldn't be very honest if I told you I'm doing everything, because I'm really not doing anything. What I am doing is making sure that the entire team working for you is free from all other issues with surrounding their employment in this company. So what I'm doing is making all of them happy, because and right after that, he said, "I like her." She didn't give me anything that was totally out of the ordinary, because I said, because that's the truth. These are the folks who are really working day and night for you. I'm supporting them to make sure that they can do that, right? So they really are the experts.
That's beautiful. I want to pivot to something, and maybe you didn't maybe aspire to become an influencer. You became an influencer because of the hard work and the dedication that you put into your field of expertise. So in a world of influencers, right? In a world where I think a lot of the younger generation is aspiring to be an influencer. Tell us a little bit about that. You're one of the top 100 in the Philippines on LinkedIn. It's a big deal, and I know that wasn't like this goal that you had on the wall, that this is what
Yeah.
I'm going to do, right? But tell us about, how did that come about? How did you become an influencer, even outside of your specific field, because of various activities that you led?
Actually, I don't know. I don't know how I ended up in that list. Honestly, I would always tell my team that I just loved my job so much, and it just loved me back. So many years ago, when I was running a center, I was walking around, and usually what I do is, when I boot up my computer, it takes a long time. So I would walk around while waiting for my computer to be fully set up. And I would talk to people around the center. And there was one person, and just randomly say, "How are you doing? I hope you're having a good day. Why the long face?" And many years later, someone sent me a message on Facebook and said, "I'm not sure if you remember me, but one day you sat beside me while you were walking, and you said, 'Why do you look so glum?' And you said that, you know what, tomorrow will be a better day. Don't worry about it. You're gonna be fine." And that stuck. So this person is now in Dubai, and that person sent me a message. He was a supervisor already, and he said, I told myself that I will be that kind of leader when I become a leader. And just knowing how small things like that, you don't even know, impact someone's life, makes all the hard work worth it. So I think, and again, I guess I was also blessed because the role that I play, or my role, allows me to touch so many lives, because in one center I would typically have about 3,000 employees. And because I would go around and talk to them in big audiences, then they would know who I am, and then I would get those kinds of notes. So that just actually, they say that, that I inspired them. They actually, those kinds of messages that I get maybe once, twice every year from folks I don't even remember, those things inspire me. That makes this entire journey, my 20-year journey, so memorable, so worth it. My
I
my husband would tell me that I'm a reluctant leader, because there were so many times where I was nominated for this, and while I am flattered, I also I would be lying if I said I didn't enjoy the attention. But with that comes so much too. So I really want to stay close to my core and the truth in me, that what I really wanted to do, my purpose for doing all of this, was actually because this industry changed my life. And I know it can change millions of lives as well. So the reason why I say this is because, as I'm a vice president for a company, I do this work for the Contact Center Association of the Philippines for free as an advocacy, because this industry opened up opportunities I did not even dream about. And I wanted to make sure that the same opportunities will still be available for the next generation of workers. Imagine, all I wanted to do at that time was to earn money. I ended up, enjoying my job, enjoying being of service to people, ended up in different places of the world, lived in the US for years as an expat. Like, was totally blown away with all of that. And I was only grateful for the folks who believed in me, even when I didn't think I can do it. So I feel in so many ways, those short phrases, short sentences of inspiration, of encouragement to others, truly goes a long way.
So
I said so
Tonichi,
many things. Sorry.
yeah, it's all great. I had the pleasure to be able to see you in action and just to see how you touched people, and they adore you. They adore you because you lift them up. They respect you. They see a great leader. And I think you're a true example of how, when passion and purpose come together, and this is the result. You didn't ask or want to be an influencer. It happened because of your actions and what you've done in being a great leader. And you talk about the story about people, and I'm sure there's more than one, many people reaching out to you to say how you touched them and how the things you did make a difference. And you've also talked about different leaders and being able to have the fortune of having many leaders, many that probably gave you specific advice. Many you learned from watching things you want to do or don't want to do that has shaped your leadership. Can you share any examples or think about any of those leaders, good, bad, or other, that have shaped your leadership to where you are today?
Yeah, so I think one of the reasons why whenever I meet, whenever at first I build a team or when I inherit a team, I make it a point to invest a lot of time to understand who they are, what makes them run, what lights them up, what inspires them, what they wake up for every morning. I make it a point to understand that because in the past, you know, I've encountered leaders who didn't know me, who didn't know who I was, who didn't know that I am not working for incentives. That doesn't drive me. What drives me is when, for a short moment, they would recognize the good work that I've done. I'm done for 2 months. I'm inspired. A monetary incentive makes me happy, yes, but it's not what fuels my passion. So when somebody says in front of when somebody says in front of my team, you did an amazing job, that I'm good. You've got me for the next 2 months until that replenishes. But there are also leaders who just left me alone. And in some occasions, that's fine. Sometimes you don't want to be bothered. But I also found myself being left behind. Like I needed the leader to back me up. I needed the leader to stand up for me. And that person didn't do that. I was left alone. And I was coaching myself into saying, no, I'm big enough. I'm a vice president. I should know, I should be able to carry myself regardless. But that's not true. And so from that point onwards, I told myself that no matter what happens, I will always, always ask my team, no matter if they've become the vice president, the country manager, how I can support them. Because if you have a really good relationship with them, they won't shy away from saying they need you in that meeting, or you just be there. Don't say anything, but be there. So that's the reason why I feel so strongly about really knowing when my team needs me to speak up for them and when I need to take a step back.
I think you said something so important for people that if they're going into their first leadership position, it's like, how do you learn to be a leader when it's your first time? Well, you've been led by people, right? So remember what felt good and what didn't, and like try to learn as many lessons as you can from the bad experiences that you had as the good. So it's just a very good reminder of that to, for people aspiring to be a leader, it's a little bit scary that first time you're put in the position of authority. But with authority comes this great responsibility to care for the people that you are in authority of. So as we wrap up, I just wanted to thank you so much for being willing to be an advisor to us, as we're really starting our journey with Bloom. And I just wanted to ask you what was it about working with Bloom that speaks to you, or like inspires you to want to connect with us? Like, how are we aligned? I would just like to hear that from your perspective.
I think that there's a connection. There's always a connection wherever we are. And as women, there are so many things that we don't talk about. And sometimes just being able to talk about it makes a world of difference. Not everything that we talk about will solve the world, remember, I said not everything, most most of it. Not everything that we talk about will solve the world or the problems of the world. But one phrase, one word, one sentence of encouragement can truly make a world of difference to somebody. And I think when you engage into a network of women, when you engage into conversations with women about anything, everything under the sun, that provides support. And support and sponsorship and allyship is what women need. Because they say we're catty, right? They say we're catty. They say here in the Philippines, I'm not sure if it's the same in other cultures, but they say in the Philippines, you try to bring other women down. I think we need to consciously and purposefully push ourselves out of that mindset just because there's just so many opportunities. And the satisfaction of being able to lift other women, other people for that matter, is thousandfold, So, and I have been a recipient of that, with them not knowing that, these folks, just one introduction, somebody who went out of their way to introduce me to somebody who would later on be an important connection to me. Those small things go a long way. And if we can do that, what we're doing now, if we can do that for just one person, it's worth it. One life, one person, one woman, it's worth it already.
Well said. And I think what you described is exactly what we're trying to create. We want that community where we have the safe space, where we can have any type of conversation, where we can have support, we can learn from one another. And as you said too, if we can touch one person and make a difference, then that's success for us. So thank you again for joining us for this interview and for being an advisor. It's been such a pleasure.
Pleasure is mine. Thank you so much.